what made you come back from US to India to do this study?
Professor Bhan actually was at NIH and he said, until now we have worked hard to bring the country from independence and to give you all the facilities that we are able to provide you now, and it's now your duty to take it forward. And that somehow got stuck with me, and I decided, okay, we'll go back, work for our people.
Meet genetic or environmental lifestyle factors in India that makes studying the disorder important, particularly.
But of course, few research here and there shows that environmental factors are important with increase in pollution.
So if you can elaborate, what is your focus area about the brain disorders? What is your study on?
So our lab mainly works on Parkinson disease. It's second most common neurodegenerative disease.
So do you feel stress is the main reason for this?
Yeah, so there are multiple reasons, and stress is definitely one of them. The first thing that they used to check was our gut. If our gut is okay, they say okay, it's not much of a problem.
You know, we have 10 million people globally who are suffering from Parkinson's disorders.
It's a large number.
And 0.5 million people in India are suffering from Parkinson's disorders. But people don't know much about it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody lands up to the doctor because they don't understand what exactly it is. We are privileged today to have Dr. Deepak Sharma, Senior Principal Scientist, CSIR IMTECH, and we will be talking more about Parkinson's disorders today. Welcome to Tech Friends, Dr. Deepak. It is our privilege that you are here today to talk about the neuro disorders. So, we start with how and when did you decide that neuro is one area where you want to do your work, and what made you come back from US to India to do the studies?
First of all, thanks for having me on this nice program. So coming to your question, actually my research journey began when I joined IISc for my PhD with Professor Raghavan, and we were working on an interesting area of developing vaccine against HIV. But during that training, we did a lot of protein engineering, and I got interested in proteins in general at that time. And one of the issue, and a lot of diseases happen because of protein aggregation. And when I went more into the details, I found this neuro-related disorder, primarily brain-related disorder, are mainly because of many of the protein that get aggregates in the cells, and those things happens. And brain has always been a fascinating organ. I used to play chess, and I used to see that, and that time I used to think how two persons sitting across a chessboard are thinking differently, though having the same organ. So that has always been fascinating. Slowly I got more interest into this neuro issue, and when I went for my postdoc at National Institutes of Health, I was working on a problem called prion diseases. Prion disease at that time was really an issue to be solved because it was not only a neuro disorder but also infectious in nature. And that's how my journey into neuro began. And when I came back to India, and our lab primarily focused on neuro-related disorder. Coming to the second part, why I came back, it's an interesting story. I always wanted to come back to India because this is the place where I got all my primary education. But at one time, Professor Bhan actually was at NIH, and he told something very, which actually remained with me even until now. And he said, until now we have worked hard to bring the country from independence and to give you all the facilities that we are able to provide you now, and it's now your duty to take it forward. And that somehow got stuck with me, and I decided, okay, we'll go back, work for our people, and now we are back looking whatever contribution we can make to the society.
Dr. Deepak, in general, we have heard more about infectious diseases, right? Disorders related to neuro is not known much in India or like to the mass. So how do you?
Yeah, I think what you're asking is very important question. Actually, you're absolutely right that a lot of us and a lot of people know more about the infectious diseases, okay, like tuberculosis and other types of infection. And the primary reason of that is because when infectious disease spread, they spread at little larger scale. We know recently COVID happened. But you see, what is happening is those diseases, infection-related diseases or infectious diseases caused by microbes, they were of major concern 50, 60 years before, after India became free and all that, okay. And they were major concern because at that time, our conditions such as hygiene, access to vaccines, and and our economy in such was not that great. So therefore, the chances or probability of spread of those diseases were much more at that time. But now when we see today, when we have developed so much, we have met our primary needs, our hygienic conditions have improved, access to medical care facility has improved.
True.
So the incidence of those diseases is actually going down. But at the same time, what has happened, you would see like around 1960 or so, average lifespan of a person on an average was somewhere around 45 or so, if you see. And that has now increased by another 30 years. And today we are living on an average about 72 years or so, if you look into it. So therefore, what has happened that even though the infectious diseases incidence are going down, but the diseases related to the brain, especially the brain, has increased a lot. Because the same organ which was supposed to work earlier for 40, 50 years, roughly about 50 years, now the same organ has to work for another 30, 40 years. So the load on our system, our natural system, we say brain as a natural computer, a nature-gifted computer, has increased a lot. So therefore, we see more incidence on neuro-related disorders, and public needs to be a little more aware that this is a major concern. So one reason is this, increase in lifespan. But at the same time, you see a lot of other conditions have also come up, which has contributed to the neuro-related disorders. Some kind of stress, okay. We are a lot busy in today's time than we were before. And all those things have contributed.
Unique genetic or environmental lifestyle characters in India that makes studying these disorder important, particularly here.
Yeah, I think so. This is another important thing, and it is open still to the research. There are a lot of, and there is no clear answer as of today. But of course, few research here and there shows that environmental factors are important with increase in pollution, with increased use of pesticide in agriculture. Of course, that is required to increase the output, but that comes at a cost. It could have a detrimental effect on our health also. So far as genetic factors are concerned, those studies in our country are still not has been developed to a stage where we can pointedly talk about it. But studies in Western countries have identified a lot of risk factors, especially that affects our cellular function, mitochondria and all. And those things are there. But in India, we still have to develop on those. And I think more research needs to be done in this case.
So if you can elaborate, what is your focus area about the brain disorders? What is your study on?
Right. So our lab mainly works on Parkinson disease. So Parkinson disease is one of the is second most common neurodegenerative disease, which comes after Alzheimer disease. So Alzheimer disease is the most common, and then Parkinson is second most common neurodegenerative disease. And the incidence of the disease in our country as well as in Western countries and all over the world has increased quite a lot. So this is the area that we currently focusing on now.
Can you elaborate more on Parkinson's?
Yeah. So see, Parkinson disease comes under the classification of, or you can say category of neurodegenerative diseases. So this is there is a group of progressive neurodegenerative disease. Progressive means because they spread slowly. So there is a gradual loss of neurons, and eventually the whatever function those neurons are supposed to do, that got inhibited, and the person start getting the symptoms related to that specific disease. So and the broader example of this groups are like Parkinson disease, on which we work. Alzheimer disease, another example. Then Huntington disease or prion disease. They are all comes under the category of neurodegenerative disorders. Now the question is why they happen and why they are occurring it so commonly nowadays. So basically, one thing which is common among all of these diseases, what everybody has seen, different groups have seen, is the accumulation of protein aggregates or protein clumps. So few molecules of protein, they come together, they form a larger clump, and these clumps are kind of toxic. And when we say toxicity, they kills the neurons, and then the neuron function gets impaired, and that's what leads to the onset of the disease. So basically, you can understand in such a way that each protein is supposed to do its native function. But when it doesn't fold into its proper shape, everything has to fold into its proper shape.
Right.
For example, if we talk about, let's say for example, this hand, we have this shape so that we can hold things together. But if we make a fist and its shape gets impaired, so now we cannot hold things together. So similarly in proteins, they fold into a native state to perform its function, and when they don't do that, then their activity gets impaired, and that leads to the diseases. So they aggregate. And these aggregates are toxic. Just if you look into, so these aggregates in the cell, they are generally known as, like the way in the home we say some kind of dump. It's like you have a cleaning person in your home who comes and clean, and things are fine. But at the same time, if person doesn't come and at home you start accumulating the garbage, you can imagine what will happen. Same thing is happening in the cell. These clumps, or you can say in common term as a garbage, they are kind of toxic and it needs to be cleaned off. And when it doesn't happen, cell die. So specifically in Parkinson, the area where we work on, there is a protein called alpha-synuclein. It gets aggregated. It leads to death of neurons, specifically dopaminergic cells. These dopaminergic cells are present in the midbrain region of our brain, specifically substantia nigra region of the brain. Now, so these dopaminergic cells die and there is a loss of dopamine. So what is this dopamine important for? This dopamine is important for our motor activities. So anything which is controlled by dopamine, all the motor activity gets inhibited, and that leads to the disease. For example, when I move my hand, we need brain to control the movement of this hand. That movement is controlled by the dopamine. And as there is a deficiency of dopamine, so there is this movement control is inhibited, and then something which I was doing normally, the movement becomes very, very slow. For example, as a healthy person can pick up this book easily and then read it. But a person who is suffering from Parkinson disease, a person who does not have enough dopamine, he will take much more time, because brain is not able to control the function. It will take much more time to reach to this book and then make a fist to hold this book and bring it to read. So that is a major problem that happens in the case of Parkinson disease.
So do you feel stress is the main reason for this?
Yeah, so there are multiple reasons, and stress is definitely one of them. But it's important to understand at this point, when we talk about stress, what is the definition of a stress? Most of the time in common in our day-to-day life, we consider stress something which is, if you look at the intensity at some high level stress, for example, somebody suffering for some kind of disease, it gives it stress to the whole family, how the treatment will happen, whether it is curable or not. Somebody has less funds to support their daily living, to pay their fee of their kids, meeting their relatives, basically meeting day-to-day life. People think that as a stress. Of course, that is a stress, and that's a traumatic stress. But at the same time, in today's living, we are living in a world where the basal level of stress has already increased as compared to our previous generation at the time when our grandparents were living. For example, today also, whosoever is sitting here may be having some little bit stress, more or less. I am under stress that I hope that I am talking nicely, giving right answers. Maybe you are under stress that how this whole interview or all things will go on. The camera person who is standing in front, he's under stress that his, whole thing should be recorded properly. So there's the basal level of stress which was not there. It's already there and we don't even realize it. And what happens to that stress? Because of that stress, all our cells, including anywhere in the body, gets affected, especially brain cells. And the reason for the brain cells is that brain cells require a lot of energy to function, much more energy than any other types of cells in the body. And because of that energy, the load on the cell is so much, and there is an organelle called mitochondria in the cell, which generates the energy that comes under heavy stress, and which leads to, in scientific term, increase in the amount of reactive oxygen species that damages lot of components of the cells. So therefore, stress plays a very, very important role in many of these neurodegenerative diseases. The reactive oxygen species that I'm talking about, in short form, they are known as ROS. That ROS affects proteins, other organelles like endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria itself, cell membranes. In fact, one of the major cause of protein aggregation is ROS. So, which is primarily because of the stress in the sense. So, we all have to realize to live whatever happens, wherever possible, a slightly relaxed and happy life and save our important organ.
Recently we had been knowing about this, like you talked about stress, right? Also there were like with the next generation, we are knowing about this dopamine kick. So how do you define, like, as you said, dopamine, when it is less, then people are having these issues, right?
Yeah.
So how are we going to explain this to the next generation? Because this is not talked about much.
Yeah, I think it's very important. So when we talk about next generation, we also have to realize that our next generation, and I see, small kids, when we were small, we were much more relaxed. We were social animals. We used to meet our cousins and we used to just go out of the home, do all different activity without telling our parents. Of course, we should tell our parents. But it was much more relaxed. But nowadays, when I see the kind of social life and get-together we are having, we see these small kids sitting all together, talking through phones to each other rather than directly. So those kind of things have changed. As you rightly said, the dopamine kick. You see, the dopamine is a neurotransmitter. An optimal level of dopamine is very, very important. Whether it is less or higher is not good for the cells. So therefore, we have to live in a way it is supposed to be, as our body is made up so that a threshold of everything is very, very important. And that's very important. I would suggest, you talked about the next generation, to have little bit more social. Mobiles are important, you can't neglect it. But I think 60 to 70% of our daily time or 80% time should go more without electronic gadget, more directly interacting with the people around, and that has also an effect on our health.
So, what will be the scientific reason for Parkinson?
So if you see, Parkinson disease is mainly there are two different reasons. If you see, one is known as the familial reasons, and second is known as sporadic Parkinson disease. So if you see sporadic means still of unknown causes. So what happens in sporadic, and there are, research is emerging to know more about what causes sporadic Parkinson disease, but most of the, as of now, what is believed is something which is related to environment, something which is related to gut microbiota plays a major role in sporadic Parkinson disease, because our gut has a lot of microbial diversity, and a balance in that diversity is required for healthy brain. Emerging research shows that this microbiota or our gut is directly connected to brain. So brain affects our gut and gut affects the microbiota. In fact, it's very interesting that if you go back and when I remember our grandparents, if something used to happen to us, the first thing that they used to check was our gut. If our gut is okay, they say, okay, it's not much of a problem. And it's very interesting that the new research has shown that gut influences our brain very, very significantly. So it's very important that what we eat, we should eat healthy, because our food affects the gut. So that is another reason of sporadic Parkinson disease. Some of the other reasons are there. Science is still emerging. For example, use of pesticides and some other toxins that affect Parkinson disease. Another reason for Parkinson, which comes under the category of familial Parkinson, many genes have been identified which are related to the onset of Parkinson disease. And if we categorize those genes, they are mainly categorized into three different categories. One, something that affect mitochondria, as I just said that this reactive oxygen species affect mitochondria. Now, and there are various genes involved which is supposed to maintain a good oxidative atmosphere, and something happened to those genes which ultimately form proteins, leads to the Parkinson disease. Second class belongs to patients where it has been seen increase in the expression of a protein known as alpha-synuclein, and that increased expression happens because a gene that expresses synuclein gets multiplied. So there is instead of a single copy, there are 2 copies or 3 copies in many of the patients. Another reason is sometimes a lot of mutations has been found in this gene known as SNCA, which expresses alpha-synuclein, which increases the probability of forming aggregates, and which leads to the increased incidence of the disease. And third category, which has been recently seen, many genes and of course the protein which are formed of those genes, which are involved in lysosomal functions, has a relation with Parkinson disease, and which is not very surprising, because as I said, the diseases happen because of the accumulation of protein aggregates. So those aggregate needs to be cleared, and the garbage bag in our cells that clear up those garbage is our lysosomes. So lysosome engulf those aggregates and disintegrates and solubilize them back. Okay. So if something happened to lysosome, that leads to the disease. So broadly there are sporadic and familial, and within the familial, mitochondria, lysosomes or SNCA, anything happens leads to the Parkinson disease.
What are the early symptoms of Parkinson's?
Yeah, so once this disease happens, it's still of concern that by the time a patient realizes that something is wrong with him or her, it's get a little bit late, because symptoms starts emerging when roughly about 50 to 60% of neurons are already dead. So that's a major concern and a broad area and broad gap in research to diagnose it early. But if we move a little bit back from where the patient has gone to the clinic, what is happening in that time when the neurons are dying, and still there is not very quite visible symptoms. So during that duration, some of the early symptoms are they are primarily non-motor symptoms. For example, loss of sleep. There is a lot of sleep disturbance that happens. Loss of smell has also been seen in many patients. And as I said, gut microbiota or gut affects Parkinson disease. Many of the patients have seen increase in constipation. Mood changes is another symptom, early symptom of Parkinson disease. But the problem is that these symptoms are so much overlapping with many other diseases that the person doesn't realize that he is on the way to get Parkinson disease. And by the time he realizes, it gets little bit to the mid stage, or you can say the advanced stage. So those are the early symptoms.
So which stage patient comes to the doctor or goes to the doctor?
Yeah, so by the time they realize, they realize when some of the symptoms starts get developing. For example, most common symptom in Parkinson's patient is development of tremors and the muscular rigidity. See, that happens, as I said, the disease happens because of the loss of dopamine. So some of the motor skills start getting affected. And one of the motor skill that start getting affected is known as bradykinesia, which is the slowness of the movement. So when they see that now their day-to-day activity started getting affected, for example, as I said, they have to eat food, but they see somebody, either the caregiver or the person himself, realize that it's taking too much time to finish an action. That's the time they realize that something is terribly wrong. So another thing is the balancing problem starts. They start getting fell down a little more regularly. Postural instability is another problem that they start facing. So instead of standing straight, they get little bit bending, and that's the time they start feel that something is really wrong, and they start consulting the doctor. Yeah. Another common symptom that has been seen, and that is slightly in the later stages, something in clinical term is known as hypomimia, which is known as masked face, as if somebody is wearing a mask. For example, now when we are discussing, we can guess that what kind of expression we are having. Either we are happy, we are more curious, or something like that. But if you see a Parkinson disease patient, those luxury of expression goes away. And this is primarily because the expression comes from the movement of the muscles, and that movement becomes really, really hampered. And that's a bigger problem in this case.
Generally, people believe that Parkinson's or any neuro disorder happens at the age of like later stage of life, like after 60 or something. So, what is the age group which is getting affected with this?
Yeah. So, if we see many years before, most of the symptoms that were seen were beyond the age of 60 or so. Of course, there was few very rare cases of early age. But with the time or over a period of time, what has been seen is that young onset, or we say even adult onset cases are becoming very, very common. And the reason behind this are multifold. Some of them are genetic reasons. It depends upon what kind of mutations is present in the causative gene. And that would decide what would be the onset age of the disease. But the second reason of early onset could also be related to a lot of stress, probably increased pollution, though those scientific evidences still has to be collected, increased use of various toxins and all. So there are multiple reasons, but yeah, you are right that now early onset cases are becoming very, very common, and it's very alarming to note that. You see, it's particularly important for our country because if you see today, we are at the median or average is towards the adult population. Very soon, they will move to the old age. So it's very important to pay a special care about these kind of diseases so that in future we have less burden, financially, economically, less burden of healthcare. So brain-related disorders are very important to pay attention for as of today.
So, doctor, how do you see India is working for it?
Yeah. So let's see first that what is going on to take care of such disease, especially Parkinson disease. You see, as I said, the disease could be familial or sporadic, but one thing which is common is in most of the cases is accumulation of these aggregates which are formed of a protein known as alpha-synuclein. So we need to either inhibit the formation of these aggregates, or if formed, we need to clean it up, and which is taken care by the lysosomes and all. So lot of research across the world and in India is going on to find molecules that can inhibit the formation of these aggregates, and also to devise strategy to clear up this aggregate at a much faster rate. It's like if something is clogged, you do something so that as you flush it out so that this garbage goes away. So in terms of inhibition of aggregation works at the very early stage. That's an early stage kind of remedies. So a lot of molecules has been designed. In our own lab, we were working on this important area, and we found some molecules. These are small peptides that inhibits the formation of these aggregates. And when we worked further using those molecules in preclinical model, such as the mouse model, we did a lot of assays such as locomotory assay, where we looked into their ability to stand on a rotating rod or ability to cross an hanging wire, and we found the nice effect of these peptide molecules. We did a lot of investigation into it and would like to move ahead if other parameters such as toxicity comes out fine. So and this is so in the later stage when aggregates are formed, lot of research is going on focusing on the lysosomes and molecules that can bring these aggregates into the lysosome, and that process is known as autophagy. That is second area of very active area of research, not only in Parkinson but many other neurodegenerative disease which comes under the category of this protein aggregation and all. Coming to your question that how much our country is focusing, well, as I said, a lot of focus has been on areas such as infectious diseases and all, but now we are slowly realizing that it is important to focus on brain related disorders, lot of more investment would be useful to put into the research for this disease. As of now, we have institutes such as NIMHANS in Bangalore, then NBRC in Gurgaon. There are few center for, I think, neurodegenerative diseases in ISC Bangalore, and of course at different institutions. But I feel that much more funding and efforts should be put into at this time, considering that a lot of our young people very soon will move into, and our old age population is going to be huge very soon in coming future.
So there's no particular medicine for it to just segregate it, right?
Yeah. So actually, Sita, so far as treatment plan, I think that's what your question is. As of now, Parkinson has, if you talk about management of the disease, there are something. But if you talk about cure, when I say cure means can we protect neurons from dying? It's not there. So we need to focus into research area which can strategies which can protect the remaining leftover neurons, so that they can do their normal function and person can live relatively healthy life. As of now, the drugs that are prescribed are those which in general are precursor of dopamine. So you basically compensate for the loss of dopamine, or there are some inhibitors of enzymes which actually degrade dopamine in the body. So those inhibitors are given. There is a treatment and quite successful, which is known as deep brain stimulation, DBS surgery, that is being done. It's kind of expensive and of course it's invasive. Not everybody can afford it. So I think there is a huge gap which we need to fulfill, and it's our responsibility as a researcher to do it. And as someone said, and I again quote, and this is what we feel in our lab, me and my students, patients are waiting. I think we all need to, and they have a big hope from us researchers, and I really feel that sometime soon we give them some relief, and at least that's the direction that I am working on. My students are working on.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak, for joining us for such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much.
Thanks to you for having me, and I hope some knowledge people would have got from this one. Take good care, and let's have a healthy brain and healthy lifestyle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Deepak.